Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Point with NavVis. I'm Kourtney, and we're joined again today by Mr. Nate McCall. Before he jumps into his interesting points that he has to share with us today, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out when we post. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and we'll be happy to get back to you. So, Nate, what do you have in store for us today?
Yeah, I thought we could start out a little bit talking about how to search for things. As you can imagine, some of these customer instances that we help our customers with are quite large, so finding things can be a challenge, but I think we've got some pretty good tools here that we can leverage to show people how to be more efficient in finding things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, you mentioned before that, we have 2 factories here, but you can have entire production networks in here, hundreds of sites, as much as your instance allows.
Yeah, right. So the first thing that obviously you could search for from this login screen that you see here is if you have a ton of sites, you can go here. This one's not a great one to demonstrate with because we only have 2 sites in this instance, but you can start typing the names of your factories and then it'll navigate you, for example, to those factories. Going back to the original screen, the other way that you can navigate or find sites too, this is just the map overview, but you can also go to a list overview as well to be able to search your sites. So that's one of the first introductions to search. Not too spectacular, but helpful if you've got a lot of sites. Absolutely.
And I have a bit of a different question on that note. Who can actually access all of these sites? We've talked a lot about people, being able to share with different stakeholders, but maybe you could tell us a bit more about how these users are actually managed in IVION.
Yeah, sure. I can show you that actually. So there's a couple of different ways. Typically, the customers that I interface with, being from large enterprises, like to leverage our single sign-on capability. So I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But if you go to this little sidebar menu here from the login screen, you'll see user management. And so, for example, if you're managing your users manually, which some smaller instances will do, it's pretty easy to set up different groups with different permissions. So I'm not going to go into the gory details of how this is managed, but it's super easy. We have 3 default groups that are part of the initial offering. Admin, editor, and viewer, but you can tier those how you see fit, and you can make these groups specific to your instance or specific to your site, for example. And then once you have your groups established, then you can go into the users. I'm not going to click on it just because folks' names and things are listed, and I don't want to show that. But then you can just set up users manually doing it that way. But again, most of our enterprise customers will leverage single sign-on. So you would decide on how you want the hierarchy of your rights and roles to be, whether you want that at an instance level or a site level. Both are possible. And then we've got some really cool documentation on our knowledge website here in the NavVis Academy that will talk about on specifically what our protocols are and how to set those single sign-on groups up so that they'll talk well with whoever your authentication provider is.
Absolutely. So that makes sense. And actually, how many users can you have? Or does it depend?
So users are for different packages that we offer. User management is a little bit different from package to package. But typically speaking, you can have generically speaking, let's say you can have as many users as you see fit. So our costs are usually not driven by the number of seats, for example, which is how a lot of software companies have structured their payment structures.
Absolutely. So essentially, you can tailor it to how you want it and how you need it, and share it with who you want, how you want, and all of that good stuff.
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
So going back to the search features, let's go back to our favorite factory that we've been talking about. So, and the folks that have seen the previous episodes have seen me do this super quick. But up here on the upper left-hand corner of my screen here, you'll see a search bar, and Once you're in a site, you can use this search bar to find things specific to this site. So if you have, if you've set up a really detailed site model and you have a lot of information in terms of buildings and conference rooms and maybe workshop areas, if you've got your site model set up, you can start typing things here. For example, I just started typing building, and you would see a list of all of the buildings that are associated with this site. What folks have seen me do in the past, we have points of interest that we're going to talk about today too. So this is a point of interest that you and I have been using over the last several episodes to talk about this project you and I have been working on together.
Yes.
So that's another feature that you can search for using the search feature.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But this is probably a good opportunity to talk to kind of transition over to points of interest and talk about points of interest. So, So this icon here, for example, is the project that you and I are working on. We provide a library of points of interest inside of IVION. So let me pull that up really quickly. So you can see most of these, especially the ones that are kind of this blue color, these are the points of interest that we provide as a starting point for the customers. But this library of points of interest is 100% maintainable. So if I scroll down a little bit further here, you can see where we've created, customized categories and then customized specific nomenclatures around things that are important for us to denote in our instance. So all of this, like I said, is maintainable down to the icon that you use. But
absolutely,
yeah, let's maybe go to a different point of interest.
As much as I love this one, would be cool to see maybe something else as well.
Yeah. So one of the more, let's say, popular ways to leverage points of interest, especially for enterprise customers and factories or in the process industry, is to tie this to asset information. So, for example, this is a point of interest that we've created for this specific robot, and we've just attached some static information here. So, just a specification sheet for this robot. If I wanted to, though, so let's recreate a point of interest. I can create a point of interest in IVION by right clicking on the point that I want to associate that with, hit create a point of interest. And then here is where you start adding context. So you can name the point of interest anything that you'd like. You have the drop down menu here to select the category of the point of interest. For example, you can decide how to view the point of interest when you call that up from the search bar, for example. And then you also have the ability here to set who can see these points of interest. So again, these go back to the groups that you and I talked about earlier in the user management function.
Okay. And I see you can add, you mentioned, so the point of interest we looked at had a static PDF, but what kind of other information could you add to this point of interest to make it a bit more interesting?
Yeah. So, all types of media are possible. So I'm just going to navigate to another point of interest. So here, we've put some information about this machine supplier, for example, who built this. We've attached a YouTube video. So, any type of static media is possible. If I create a point of interest here on the actually, let's do something a little bit more realistic. So this HMI over here, if I create a point of interest, you can see that, the different types of media that you can tape are attached to this point of interest. You can, if you wanted to, you could link funny cat videos to this HMI and watch YouTube videos. I'm not sure that's the best use of the technology, but it's possible.
Some fishing videos,
for example,
yeah.
And the ability to link static information is a good function and a good tool. But as you and I both know, in factories, things change, right? And so a lot of times what we'll have are customers that will leverage point of interests and make direct connections, for example, to their central maintenance management platform. So they'll go in and they'll create, they'll modify their library to mirror what they have in programs like SAP or IBM Maximo to, where they have their asset hierarchies, and they'll create their libraries to mirror that, and then they'll do a live link back to those systems, so that they know that they're always pulling up the latest and greatest information about that asset. So whether that's spare parts lists, going back and seeing when certain work orders and things were executed on that asset. And all of that's done through our APIs. And that's also another opportunity for me to show you, going back to our knowledge base. We have several APIs that you're able to leverage to make these live connections to these systems. For certain systems, like the ones I mentioned before, SAP, IBM Maximo, we have customers that already have those integrations. So if that's something that's interesting to customers, those are things that we can help facilitate and getting some of that stuff set up for them.
Okay, very cool. So you mentioned like live asset monitoring and keeping the most recent information in these POIs. What other would you say? Is there any other? What is the value of these points of interest? Other than that, is there? Maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about asset management and central maintenance management platforms and things like that. So that's on the reactive side, maybe a lot of times people will also create points of interest and attach information about the production health. So maybe they're tying in directly to their MES system and pulling out OEE information and tracking that live. So you can do virtual tours in the factory and see how things are performing, and then taking it down even a level more detailed is a lot of customers are using sensors and things to do conditional monitoring on specific assets. So if you have a accelerometer on all of your gearboxes on conveyor systems to help predict failures, and you have dashboards set up, those are also things that you can set up and tie directly to a point of interest to help with that. Conditional monitoring, predictive maintenance type use cases. On the flip side, and we haven't talked too much about this, and we can definitely pull this into a future episode with the right folks, is IVION Go, which is our mobile app. A lot of times folks will set up points of interest. IVION Go is a way to locate yourself on the shop floor in that data. And you can actually push data to other systems as well. So if you wanted to create a point of interest while you're on the shop floor, maybe Kourtney hasn't cleaned up her workshop after she finished work for the day, and you want to send her a message that she needs to go clean up her work area, you can create that point of interest using IVION Go and connect that also back to a backend ticketing system, for example, using those APIs that I mentioned earlier. So those are like some very low-hanging fruit use cases that I hear our customers using points of interest for, also leveraging our backend APIs there.
Okay, very cool. So it's also a way to get your colleagues to go clean up after themselves.
For example, yeah, exactly.
Awesome, cool. Well, that's the end of those are my questions for this episode. Thank you, Nate, again for joining us. We love having you on to show us all these cool features, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, awesome. Good to see you.
Thanks everyone again for joining. Please check out the description below where you'll find some links to a test instance and all the information that Nate shared in today's episode. And please feel free to leave any comments or questions you have below. We'll be happy to get back to you. Bye.